I don't know what it is about insane asylums, but being in one is pretty much my worst fear. Maybe it's the unpredictability of the mentally unstable people inside it, but I think it has something to do with how inhumanely they were treated before modern forms of therapy existed. So naturally, it seems only fitting for me to rank the top 10 most haunted insane asylums in the world. Because I'm too scared to go to any of these places to test out how haunted they are, this list is in no particular order. Ready to get scared? First up is the Danvers Lunatic Asylum. It was a mental institution and it was also a jail for mentally unstable criminals. Some call the Danvers the birthplace of the prefrontal lobotomy, which is a surgery where the nerve pathways in a lobe of the brain are severed from those in the other areas. It's said to be a home for evil spirits, as there's actually a huge graveyard on the premises. Not only that, but Danvers actually used to be Salem Village. The Salem, like as in the Salem witch trials. So naturally there's a lot of freaky spirits around there. If you're looking for something to do on Halloween and you're in the area, definitely visit Salem Village. Moving along now, it's the Utica State Hospital in New York. Like many hospitals in the year 1841, this hospital was famous for its inhumane treatment. But one treatment specifically I thought I would mention, the Utica crib. Named after the hospital, it's basically a full-size crib cage with a door so you could lock patients in so they couldn't escape. The hospital was once praised for inventing this now ridiculous form of treatment. It was used for uncontrollable patients as a sort of timeout box. The craziest thing was, the people that would end up in these boxes were uncontrollable because they were suffering from strokes, heart attacks, and epilepsy seizures. They actually needed medical attention. The Utica hospital is now abandoned and boarded up, but people report seeing faces at the window and a feeling of sadness when you walk around inside. Many of the patients are still there, dead and locked up in the rooms. Next up, we've got the Buffalo State Asylum for the Insane in Buffalo, New York. When it was first built, it was supposed to advance the design of mental facilities by separating patients by gender and how mentally ill they were. However, even though it may have started that way, a lack of funding led to mistreatment and overcrowding. It was so crowded that patients slept on top of each other in tiny beds, covered in their own excrement. The treatment here was incredibly inhumane. Doctors cut into the patient's head, took out portions of their brain, and that actually made them into living zombies. It's been closed since 1974, but ghost hunters say that you can actually still hear patients whispering and screaming. The next asylum on our list is the GaNGM Psychiatric Hospital in South Korea. According to the locals, patients kept dying mysterious deaths, which led to the facility closing. Some think that it was the owner of the asylum that kept patients as hostages. He fled to the United States after the patients' families demanded explanations. There is also rumors that the doctors themselves went insane here and continued treatment on the patients that were just as insane as they were. Next is the Greystone Park Psychiatric Center in New Jersey. This was another mental hospital that started as an effort to make healthcare better for the mentally ill. However, it soon became overcrowded with 7,000 patients in 1953. This was because of all the war veterans coming out of World War II who were suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. They used electroshock therapy and insulin shock therapy, which were extremely primitive forms of treatment, and it only made the patient's mental illnesses worse. Even though the doctor said that it had a success rate of 50% for treating schizophrenia, the rest of the patients were not so lucky. As the result of this poor treatment, which was basically torture, some of the patients were left with brain damage, severe obesity, and restlessness. After many reports of sexual abuse, suicides, and an escape of a convicted rapist, the facility closed in 2003. So naturally, the place is extremely haunted. If you're interested in seeing just how haunted, check out the movie Greystone Park. Moving along now to the Beechworth Lunatic Asylum in Victoria, Australia. Over 9,000 patients died here in its 128 years of being open. Before its closing in 1995, it had the reputation of being an asylum that few people left alive. Apparently people see ghostly faces in windows all the time, and you can also hear children laughing in the hallways. The ghost of a man named Tommy Kennedy, who actually had the job of transporting the dead bodies, can also be seen roaming the grounds still. Alright guys, coming up next we've got the Lear Psych House in Norway. Unlike many of the psychiatric hospitals on our list, this place still houses patients. Those patients report seeing ghosts, shadows, and odd noises. Between 1945 and 1974, the hospital was famous for testing drugs on its patients. New drugs that the pharmaceutical industry was afraid to test on humans. Moving along now, it's the first insane asylum ever built. It's the Narrenturm in Vienna, Austria. Nicknamed the Fool Tower, it dates back to 1784. It resembles a fortress, and treatment for the mental patients back then was pretty much non-existent. It was just a loony bin where insane people were kept instead of letting them be on the street. It then became a mental training facility in the early 20th century. It's now probably the creepiest museum you've ever seen in your life. There's jars of deformed fetuses on display and wax models of untreated STDs. There's even a stillborn baby from 1827 that was nicknamed the Devil. devil. It doesn't have horns, but it literally has no brain, so the head ends in big bulging eyes, and the back of the head exposes brain tissue. Moving along now, getting close, it's the Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Kentucky. This one is definitely one of the more famous examples. With a reported 63,000 deaths in the hospital, you know there's some freaky stuff that goes on there now. It was originally a hospital for people suffering from tuberculosis, but a lot of human experimentation went on there that led to the huge number of patient deaths. There were so many deaths that there was actually a death tunnel or body chute that the dead bodies will be chucked down. Some of the spirits can still be seen, including a boy named Timmy who plays with a rubber ball, and he's actually been caught on film. There's also reports of people seeing a nurse who hung herself in room 502. Are you scared yet? This last one's a doozy. It's the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in West Virginia. You may have seen this place featured on Ghost Hunters or on the Travel Channel's Ghost Adventures. It's located in West Virginia. It once housed 2,400 patients, including Charles Manson himself. Its documented deaths were high up in the thousands, and patient-to-patient killings and rapes were frequently reported for the last few years it was open. A nurse went missing, and 2 months later her body was found at the bottom of an unused staircase. By the time it was closed in 1994, it resembled a German death camp. People were kept in cages and chained to things. With all that death and violence, obviously it's an extremely haunted place. People claim to see patients roaming the hallways, a nurse, and even a Civil War soldier named Jacob. There's even a spirit named Ruth that likes to attack visitors. You can constantly hear banging noises and strange sounds. Like some insane asylums, you can actually stay here overnight. Not sure why you would want to. Would you guys ever want to go on a haunted tour of any of these places? Let me know in the comments down below. Whoa, I have goosebumps. That was really scary. Okay guys, that is all for now. I hope you enjoyed that list, and I'll see you all in another video.